Welcome, everybody, ladies and gentlemen of the viewing audience, to our session 0 of the Long Voyage. This is our brand new show here on CharismaToAC. This is replacing A Song at Tara, which concluded last week. Yeah, I know. You're gonna be sad about that for a while.
To be fair, what we've got coming sounds and is very exciting as well. So that's the main thing.
Yes, that is the main thing. In any case, I am joined by the entire group for this session 0. There's one change from A Song of Tara, in that Fena's player is not with us on this group. However, we have instead been joined by none other than Brain, who some of you may know from our Masks series, also here on Charisma2AC. And other than that, the whole merry gang from Assad are, in fact, they're still here. They're back. I guess I must have done something right, since I haven't scared them off. In any case, the idea with this session 0 is to, first and foremost, to introduce the characters. You've made them beforehand in this case, but to introduce the characters also to each other, have a chance to get a feel for these characters and what role they play on the crew and on the ship, and also for you guys to have a chance to ask me any questions you might have about the setting and about how things are done, and so on and so forth. And this obviously also goes to both Chris and Rasmus, who have prior knowledge of the world in which this game is played. Because you guys know it so well, you might actually sit there with some questions that you, strictly speaking, know the answer to already, but which you think might be beneficial to the others to know about as well. And in that case, by all means, please chime in and ask them, and I'll do my best to answer them pretty succinctly and without taking up hours for each question, obviously. Other than that, I've only got one or two more short things to say. Of course, the first one being that this game will be using the rules system known as GURPS, Generic Universal Role-Playing System. This has been chosen because specifically it is a generic role-playing system, and because it fulfills the need of this of the setting very, very well indeed. You can play anything from caveman to hyper super mega high tech science fiction in under the umbrella of GURPS, but it is quite good for generic sort of fantasy worlds, and obviously that is what this is can be classified as. Other than that, I've only got one thing more that needs to be taken out of the way, and that is because I specifically want to give a shout out to one specific listener or viewer who left us a comment on the wrap up video for A Song of Tara, which touched those of us who have played that game very, very profoundly. So I hope that you're still listening in, Kawe. I really do, and I hope you're going to enjoy this as much as you did, Assad, because that comment really made my week, at least, and I'm pretty sure it did for several of the others as well.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And on that note, I think we should get started. I've been blabbering for quite long enough already. But yes, we are in fact dealing with a sort of unique setting in that basically your home base is a ship. That's not something you see all that often, at least not outside science fiction. So obviously this is a ship of a type which is easily compared. It's comparable to Viking vessels. It is a longship type. It has a crew of 72 men and women, or rather, well, that's nominally at least what it is meant to be crewed by. Some of these crewmen are named already. Others will no doubt be named through throughout the campaign. But of course, the characters, the 5-player characters, are in fact crew members on this ship. The ship is known as the Fagerfärd, which means the beautiful voyage, or beautiful journey. Either would really be an adequate translation. And yes, I think we should probably let you introduce your characters, and I'm going to take a page out of Daniel's playbook.
Dear God.
See what I did there, and I'm going to start from the top and let the first one on the list be the first to introduce himself. And the first one, of course, is, and let's see if I have actually managed to set up all this correctly. I think I have, but it is this fellow, and here you go, guys. So, Rasmus, let us hear from you. This is your character.
Yes, this is my character, Frodi Eileifersson. He's 19 years old. He's a Southlander. He's got red hair and grey eyes. And I don't know if you want me to answer the questions or what.
No, I think they're mostly for use between the rest of you. Let's let us have the viewers discover those things as the game progresses.
In that case, perhaps just some backstory.
Yeah, just a bit of information about him in general, maybe a bit of personality.
Yeah, he's a very gregarious fella, which he seems to have inherited from, well, both his mother and his father. They were known around Hyrbol for being very lovey-dovey and oh so fond of each other. He had a big, happy family, and initially he was he worked as a charcoal maker. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
But he discovered that he had magical powers, like his somewhat famous grandmother, who was a famous seer and added a lot to some of the very important prophecies of the Southlands. He's, as I said, a very gregarious fella. He's very curious, and he's not that good with being bored, which has led to him inventing a ton of ways to avoid boredom, such as always keeping games on his person or engaging in scrimshoring. Because as you might imagine, if you know how charcoal making works, that is something where you're likely to be bored if you're not prepared.
Yeah, you spend an absolutely outrageous amount of time sitting around on a one-legged stool doing bug all but watching a big pile of a big mound of earth, hoping that you don't suddenly see a gout of flame flicking out in some part of it, because then you've just wasted 48 hours and you can start over again. Yay!
One of the few circumstances you will see a Southlander just weeping with frustration.
Having just gone around gathering about 2 tons of wood, which is already a fairly scarce material in the Southlands, and then watching that happen.
Yeah. He also has a bit of a fascination with fire, not in a I'm a pyromaniac kind of way, more of a well, this is clearly a wild thing. How do I try to control it kind of way? Outside of that, he has a few connections to the other characters. His family took in Aya's character at some point, and she's been a good friend to his sister. And Heine's character's wife was the sister of Frodi's mother.
Oh, right. Right. Okay. And let's see. Next up, then, is this woman. And that is your character, Aya. So let's hear some about her.
This is Ylva Fridarsdottir.
Yep.
She is a battle maiden, and she sometimes likes to boast that she's sometimes more manly than the men.
Yeah. All right.
At least when she beats them up and leaves them crying in a corner.
And she can. We should probably add that she is in fact able to do that.
The only reason she does that if someone tries to play it up, and she then beats them to a pulp and leaves. She has a tendency to wear a mace at her side at all time, and a large warhammer on her back.
She is also, I should probably add, she is also, as I said, she's quite capable of beating people up because she is very strong.
But, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
But perhaps this would be a good opportunity for the storyteller, for Game Master now.
Yes. Well, storyteller is fine.
To explain to the listening audience exactly what a battle maiden is.
Well, I'll do that as soon as Aya is done with her introduction of the character. Then I'll add a few words to that.
She is a fairly attractive girl, which is surprising because normally it's not what they try to breed out in people in the Southlands. And despite her extreme strength, she is usually very cheerful unless you catch her in the mornings.
So she's not a morning person, in other words.
No, and I'm very sorry, Frody, that you found out that way.
Yeah. Living in a small house, something like that.
Yeah.
Smack.
So basically, they have they have a you have a grumpy a grumpy ultra warrior on board on the mornings.
She's like a swan. In the morning, she's a very ugly duckling. But as time goes on, she goes into this happy swan that is cheerful most of the day. Until the day after, when she reverts back to this ugly duckling.
Yes.
Who snaps at everything that comes her way and looks at her wrong.
Yes.
She has some connections to the others, as she has her childhood friend, Sentry. He is like the older brother she never had, and all the times they've gotten into issues can't be counted. And she was taken in by Frody's family and were very good friends with Astrid, his younger.
Yes. All right. Anything else you want to add?
Can't think of anything.
All right. Then, as I said, I would add a few words about what a battle maiden is. This is a trait in the culture that this people that these characters come from. They are known as Southlanders. They live in a very cold region of this world. It's basically, it is the equivalent of Scandinavia, but imagine, please, that you turn the compass rose on its head and left to right. So what we would think of as north is south to them. What is east to us would be the west in their world. So Southlanders are the for lack of a better comparison, they are the Vikings of this world.
as opposed to the Northmen or the Norsemen. It's the Southlanders.
Exactly. So it's the Southlanders instead, precisely. And consequently, they also have something which is not that different from shield maidens, except they call them battle maidens instead. It is a sisterhood which is rather loosely organized, but there are very strict rules regarding this. Only very few women enter this sisterhood. They have very strict responsibilities to help defend anyone in the Southlands who require their aid. On the other hand, they can also expect hospitality and to be fed by whoever they meet along their way, for example. But most of them still choose to hunt for their own food. It's a good way to practice archery, for example. They're also they don't have a trade. They don't do crafts on the side. They are professional warriors who dedicate their entire lives to becoming the finest fighters they can be. They are an elite, and they are seen as an elite, and they are treated with a great deal of respect. They are not allowed to have any kind of romantic or sexual relations with men. They are barred from becoming mothers, which is one of the reasons why it is only relatively few women who actually choose to join their ranks. It's a humongous and lifelong commitment to do, and very few of them grow to ripe old age because they are a military elite. They will be fighting in most wars, and this is a world which is constantly embroiled in war and battle, so most of them don't get to be all that old. But nonetheless, a number of women still choose to join their ranks, and Ylva is one of 3 battle maidens on this crew. And okay, let us go to the next character. This fellow, Sindri.
Sindri!
Yes.
I'm sorry. Yes, Sindri Gudriksson. 20-year-old black-haired and somewhat dour fellow. Annoyingly, I couldn't find a picture to represent him that was sufficiently ugly enough, because the guy is meant to be quite ugly to look at. He is on the crew partly as a scout and archer, sort of. So yeah, he'll be the one that goes ahead of a party if they're going on a raid or just traveling inland to see if they can find something. He'll be the one at the forefront, spotting any threats or anything of interest that they might want to convene on, or something similar. And other than that, we'll probably occasionally also work on the in the crow's nest of the ship, or the equivalent of a crow's nest.
Yeah, basically, he will be sitting on the boom, on the yard rather. The boom would be further down, but on the yard of the mast, there isn't a fixed crow's nest on a ship like this.
No, this itself speaks of a fairly strong constitution, of course, because if you're up there at the top of the ship where the swaying is the strongest,
yes. He doesn't get seasick. Let's just put it that way.
No.
He's been seasick a few times, probably.
Oh yes.
And then he's quite probably been beaten up by the men he threw up all over.
He probably and then he'll probably have fought back as well, because
or the
woman. Yes.
Yes, that would have been very awkward.
Yes.
Especially if it had been Ylva, because then the worst thing is if it had been Ylva, he would not stand to defend himself, even in a sort of half-hearted manner, because the point is that they, as was mentioned earlier by Aya, they have been friends since childhood.
Yes.
And so yes, he does feel quite warmly towards her as family. In fact, this ties in partly to one of his quirks. He has 2 quirks that I have definitively decided, and 2 that are yet to be decided, which I'm hoping to do over the course of this starter session.
Yes, or if not this, then the first couple of times that we actually get into the game.
Yes. So, among other things, among his many talents and personality quirks, Sindri is a grumpy sort, and will act with terseness towards those around him, which I'm sure will endear him to many, many people. As again, with the exception of Ilva, who he will actually show some kind of genuine warmth to. And otherwise, he is he is a racist. Let's put it that way. He has a low opinion of anyone who is not a Southlander, or at least as strong and as hard as a Southlander. So anyone who hasn't done things the Southlander way, hasn't proven themselves to be as strong and cunning as a Southlander, they're not worth it. His opinion.
No. So he has very low opinions of basically everyone else. It should be said. I'll get back to that when you're done.
But yes. Otherwise, his relationships with other people are... He's occasionally worked alongside the Jarl's son and... Well, both the Jarl's sons, both his biological and adopted, which means he may have come into contact occasionally with Frody, but not enough to have made any particular impression one way or the other, so they don't really know each other all that well at all. Buggy, who we'll come to later... Again, similar, met him a few times, sold him some pelts for when he went out hunting, but that's about it. And as far as I can tell, I know he has no relationship whatsoever with Gulfi, with Brain's character. So who knows? Maybe that's something we can hash out later, or maybe they just literally never met.
Yeah, they might just have met, basically. So,
but yes, so that's basically it. A grumpy, racist, short, little worded scout, lookout, and sharpshooter, basically.
Yeah. Well, it should be said, since you mentioned that, he doesn't like anyone who isn't as hard and as tough and as cunning and so on as a Southlander, it should probably be pointed out here that in this world, Southlanders are veritable giants. Many of them, most of them, in fact, stand over 6 foot in height. A little scrawny runt of a Southlander might be 5'10", and that would be he would probably be mocked mercilessly for being a short-ass shite. Whereas the average height in the nearest major landmass to the Southlands, which is a place called Tearglass. In Tearglass, the average height for men is somewhere between 5'4" to 5'6". So the Southlanders tower over other people, and that of course means that to someone like Sindri, basically everyone else except for Southlanders are just wastrels.
Yes, pretty much.
Yeah. That said, let's continue on to the next character in line, and that would be... Oh, yes?
Before we continue, I forgot to say the role she had on the ship.
Let's hear it, definitely.
She's the helmswoman because she has the strength for it.
Yes, that's true. She is, in fact, on the steering oar because she's strong enough to hold it, even in a storm. So, yeah. Okay, let's move on to the next one, is Buggy.
Yes, Buggy Baldason. And Buggy is a wanderer, having traveled throughout the Southlands for, I want to say, the last 10 years of his life. He's very much the opposite of Sindri. He's very outgoing. He's a person who's easy to talk with. He likes a good deal, and he's not adverse to having a good pint of mead at the local drinking hall. He's the picture makes him, I think at least, seem a bit older than he is. He's 26 years old. But that's mainly due to his many travels throughout the Southlands. Yeah, basically that's it. So he's not quite as old as the picture makes him out to be. But as far as his relations with the others, Rasmus basically mentioned Buggy's wife, Halbjorg, being sister to Frodi's mother, and this means that Buggy is a close friend of the family. Yes. So he's known Frodi for quite a while now, and they're somewhat close. As for the others, I think his outgoing nature and his constant tail spinning makes him rather likable, I think. That's up to the others, of course, but
yeah, but he does spin a good yarn.
Yeah, he does. He tells a good story now and again, basically.
Plus, he's seen some of the world already, so
yeah, he has.
And at least he's seen Tearglass, so that makes him able to tell stories about faraway lands.
Yeah, exactly, and he's been to Valornes quite a few times now, so he has quite a few stories. Some of them grossly exaggerated, but
hey,
whatever
like
makes for a good
got
story.
Away, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So as for his role on ship, he's an adequate sailor. No more than that. It's definitely not his strong suit, but he's capable enough. I think his forte is his skills with other people, his ability to communicate and
he's a good first contact person. Basically,
he is. He's a good face.
Yeah. Yeah, and he's also, as you said, he's an adequate sailor, as you put it. But he is, at the same time, he can pull an oar, which is important in itself, and that's the oarsmen are needed on a ship like this because guess what? There are times when there is no wind.
Yep. Yeah. So whenever he's stuck on the ship with the others, he'll basically do menial tasks. He's not a specialist in any way. So yeah, that's Buggy Balla.
Sure. And you mentioned a place as well that I should probably add a few words to. You mentioned a place called Valornes. Valornes is the capital of the Southlands, or at least it's the capital of the part of the Southlands that you guys are from. Which is the largest area in the larger part of the Southlands, but we'll get back to that, I'm sure, with questions and answers later on. But it's a city at this point. It is a city of 5,000 to 6,000 people living there permanently, and of course, because it is a trading hub, a lot of people that live in tents outside for a little while until they go home again because they're there to trade. But 5,000 to 6,000 people is a considerable number for a fixed settlement in the Southlands, where a very large town would have maybe 400 people. That would be a sizable place in the Southlands. The second or third, one of the largest cities in the Southlands, in fact, is where you guys are from, Hyrborg. That is a very large settlement as well, with well over 1,000, almost 2,000 people living there. Anyway, that is... let's see. That is Buggy, and then we move on to the final character in the on the list, Gylfi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Okay. Before anything, disclaimer: I have not once in my life pronounced nowhere in Icelandic, Dutch, and anything like. I will attempt it. But
it's fine. It's fine.
So I apologize for any ear bleeds caused by it.
That is fine.
Just a disclaimer.
Don't worry. I don't know how it's pronounced anyway either.
Yeah. So.
The strange letter in there, for the record, the sort of the weird D-like letter, is pronounced as a very soft TH sound, like you would have in the.
I'm gonna I will go with what Google Translate told me to pronounce it.
That's fine. Go ahead.
My name is Gylvi Harvaitnason.
Yes.
Well, this character is what you would consider a nerd. If this ship was a high school, he would be wedged and stuck in the lock. But to this other more serious stuff, Gylvi is, I think, in the runners for the youngest member of the crew. I did not discern his age, but he's probably just barely scraped adulthood. He is a pun not intended, a brain amongst the people. He's what he lacks in his physical aptitudes and combat abilities. He picks up in and knowledge of various things and unusual skills. Well, unusual for a man, I suppose. He's quite semi-knowledgeable of the folk medicine, herbalism. He can heal ailments and other. He can obviously gather herb, prepare some basic medicine, and also patch everybody up if needed be.
Yes.
Also, he possesses a plethora of skills, general, I would say, utility skills, like he knows how to cook, he knows how to sew. He's I would say average or above average at being a crewman on the ship.
He would make a reasonably decent housewife, actually.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Actually, on the point of that, he was actually I wouldn't say he was a housewife, but he was for a long time before he reached adulthood. He was doing the duties of one since his mother passed away before he reached adulthood, and he was picked up since he was the weakest and the odd one of the bunch. He picked up all the duties and all the tasks that his mother performed before.
Yes.
He is also he's also what we would call a xenophile. He has a fascination for other nations, other cultures and civilizations. He knows the basics, or he knows the linguistics of the language of the Green Shores or Tirglass. And also he has a plethora of quirks and downsides apt for his young age and relative weakness and cowardice, because I think he is the only member of the crew of the ship that has not tasted real battle. He was in sparring, he trained in combat like any good Southlanders would, but he never tasted battle. The first one he's seen from afar.
Yeah.
I have not yet discerned familiarity with other members of the crew outside, like before becoming a part of the crew. So that will be.
He might not have much familiarity with them, but if he does, then we can figure it out maybe over the course of the evening.
Yes.
Yeah, and I already have a suggestion, but we can take that later.
And also, like, I will not be running down now his massive list of problems and negatives.
Disadvantages.
Yes, he has quite a lot.
Yes.
I will run down quickly his quirks, because those will probably appear more often. He's a workaholic, which basically is a compensation for his inadequacies in terms of battle, in terms of strength and raw physicality. He does a lot of work. He pushes himself to do a lot of work, a lot of other work around the ship, because he knows he's only as useful as much work he does, and that's his work. He's basically only thing keeping him from going overboard. He possesses slight insomnia, which is tied into his into possessing a little bit of flashbacks due to witnessing the horrors of Herborg burning, and basically seeing his first battle from afar. He also possesses slight stutter, which I will try to attempt to do. If I cannot do it, I would say respectfully, then I will just describe him as doing such.
Of course.
And he is a coward, a stinking coward. Well,
which is a rarity in the Southlands, to be honest.
I would say he's not a full coward. He is. I would say he is. He would be more of a, because it's not a full disadvantage. It's a quirk. Since then he will be a. He's like, probably it will factor in like overwhelming fear, like, and not factor like such strongly mechanically, more of a narrative thing.
Yes, and maybe the guy he let's just say he will probably be the kind of person who will try pretty much any other solution except fighting.
Indeed. Also, interesting thing. He has a lovely singing voice.
Yes.
That is very strange.
I think somebody requested my singing. Don't.
It's fine. Don't worry. You don't need to.
Yeah, and other than that, I'm just looking through his skills. If something is really worth mentioning, he knows about heraldry, but that ties into his nerdiness. Also, yeah, and just short description. What is his role above the ship? And I will now not try to prose that. I'll just read what I noted is: he cooks, he stitches clothes, bedrolls, and sails. He also heals warts, boils, fevers, shits, and all other wonderful ailments, just to keep his usefulness to the crew. They might think him weak and an insult to the Southlander heritage, but when they are too sick to row, cannot hold their food, the sail tears, or their bedroll leaks, they are glad he is there. He also have a lovely singing voice and knows a myriad of songs.
Yes. So he is not only is he useful for the practical reasons, he can also help with entertainment. And quite frankly, when you are sitting on what is in effect an oversized rowboat on a crossing between two large islands or nations or whatever for several days, sometimes for weeks, you're gonna get bored very quickly if there isn't any kind of entertainment on board, because you're gonna have water to drink and fish to eat, and you're gonna stick your bum over the side of the ship when you need to take a dump, and you're gonna be there will be absolutely no privacy whatsoever. So having someone there who can actually entertain them is it's a good thing.
Yes.
All right. Well, anything else you want to add?
I don't know.
No.
I'm glad to be here.
We're glad to have you. We're glad to have you.
Yep.
All right. Then those are, in fact, ye olde characters in this story, and I think I'm gonna go to the Q&A now, because the point being that those, getting some answers to some of these things might help you also figure out more about your own characters and their places in the Southlands and so on, and maybe that'll help with figuring out some relationships with one another. So if you get any ideas like that, you said you had an idea for how you would have known Gylfi, then by all means break in and make that suggestion. So in fact, let's start by hearing what your suggestion was.
Well, if they grew up in the same city, she would probably pretty quickly have noticed that the poor man is a geek and therefore being beaten up by everyone else. And she is a good woman, and she does live up to the battle maiden thing, basically bodyguard.
Oh yeah, so you would have, you could have helped protect him.
It's just she lives up to the battle maiden even before she was a battle maiden, and helping those who need it. Yeah. He needed it because he was stuck in the trash can for a couple of days there.
Yes, he was abused by his brothers, and
it's just like, you're stuck in a trash can again. Yeah, come pick up your brother. No, slum, pick him up.
Yeah, exactly. So basically, she would be protecting him from bullies when she noticed something happening. Of course, that. Yeah. How do you feel about that one, Gylfi? That might be an idea.
It's really I'm all for it. I'm all for it. This is definitely a thing that will be happening. Yes. I'm not saying just because of that he has a bit of a very much repressed hero crush.
Oh God, that is
because he knows that's a no big no.
Yes, I'm pretty sure she would have made the joke, because she would probably have seen that he took over all the women duties.
Yeah.
And then she would probably have made the joke, "Hey, I can be the man in the house."
Oh God, I can just imagine the blush.
And she's like,
and she would have been grinning. She would have been grinning very widely, and then smacked him on the shoulder a little too harshly than she first thought, and then he planted his face in the ground or something like that.
Just slightly break the shoulder.
Sure. I'm sorry.
I think that guy's gonna...
I'm pretty sure I can get it back into this. No, now I just. Why is it spinning that way?
I think it's going to be fun having that guy around.
It will.
All right. So anyway, as I said, Q&A. If anybody here, if you've got any questions about the world or the setting or that sort of thing, by all means.
Well, you can't quite see it, but I'm actually raising my hand right now.
All right, let's hear your question then.
How do we address each other, or rather, how would we address strangers? Is it master this, or how do we talk to people we aren't too familiar with?
That's actually a good question. There aren't that many, for example, noble titles in the Southlands. Just to start with that, are relatively rare. There aren't that many different ones. You will occasionally find someone who declares himself king. They would pronounce it konungur, but it's a king. Usually those families lay claim to such titles for a couple of generations at most, sometimes for a couple of weeks or months, because they tend to overreach pretty quickly. Southlanders are a fiercely independent bunch and don't like to be ruled like that. But there are jarls in the Southlands. Those are really, they are the highest tier of nobility would be the jarls. And in those cases you would address them by that title and their first name.
Their first name?
Yes.
Okay.
So, for example, if you have a man named Gunnar, who would be, it would be Jarl Gunnar, just to take an example. And then below them you have a much more common kind of nobility, but they don't hold that much power because they are usually in the employ of a jarl. But they are known as hersia, and they are in a hersia is typically he would be in charge of a single village, for example, or maybe two villages, and it would be his job to protect that area with his. He would make sure that the menfolk and any battle maidens, for that matter, in those villages would always be, trained, that they would keep their weapons and their armor clean and in good order, and he would drill with them once in a while to make sure that their abilities didn't go rusty. So he would more be a man who would be in charge of protection of an area. A non-noble title, which is highly craved and in fact is often seen as more respectable even than a hersia, would be captain. The fact that you are the captain of a ship makes you somebody, because owning a ship gives you freedom, possibilities, and it means that you will have men and women who will be in your employ, and in the case of a warship, obviously, you will have people who are fighting for you. In the case of a trading vessel, you will have a crew that will help you go elsewhere and make oodles of silver. So, that's that. Being a captain is, and you would address them as captain, whatever. Again, first name if you know them, last name if you don't.
Okay.
Southlanders are generally speaking quite informal, but still with a certain respect for those above them in station, obviously. But they're not a terribly formal bunch. They value their individuality quite highly.
Okay.
And just one last thing there. While it's obviously it depends on the on each individual person out there. There's one time of the year where every man, freeborn man in the Southlands, has an equal say in anything, and that's at the annual assembly at Vananess, where every man there has the same amount of leverage. A jarl will have the same vote, one, as a craftsman or a peasant.
Okay.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay.
So then, if I was to address a peer of mine that I don't know, how would I address him then?
If you don't know him, you'd probably address him by his full name.
Okay.
And then as soon as you had clapped each other's arms in a healthy handshake and maybe shared a drink or something, you'd probably be on first name terms. It doesn't take much.
Okay. Cool.
I like Heine. He's smart. How do we talk to people?
Yes.
Very important.
You open your mouth and you speak. You formulate words with your tongue.
So that's how it works. Okay, cool.
Yes.
In case of many people, opening your mouth to talk actually is a bad idea.
Very true.
Yes, that is a good point.
Okay. It's considering. Are we taking the normal breaks this session, or are we going to just plow on? Just because we've got 5 minutes.
We're taking the normal breaks, but we're going to go on for another 5 or 6 minutes before we do so.
In that case, I shan't ask the question I wanted to ask because I imagine it will take a bit of time.
By all means, we can extend it a little bit, so don't worry about it. Let's hear it.
Okay, so we mentioned that yes, there's no king lasts very long. There are many jarls and captains, and there are only certain times where they all maintain an equal vote. But since I have knowledge of this and the others don't, who is in overall charge of this particular faction of the Southlanders?
Oh, what a wonderful question! Yes, this goes to the heart of the world. The world, the setting as such, is one of constant warfare, as I mentioned before. This is because there are many gods in this world, many different pantheons of gods out there. They're not known as gods. That word isn't used at all. They're called powers, the powers. They almost never have names as such. They just have titles. But this is because the powers are not allowed to interfere in everyday life on this world, because the whole point of the world's existence is to figure out which of these gods, these pantheons of gods, who's the strongest. As I always put it, who's got the biggest dick in the shower room, basically. And the way they have agreed to do this is to create this world, and each of them have then chosen or created a champion for themselves. Each group of deities, each group of powers have created a champion for themselves, placed them into this world and told them to fight to the death. And the last man or woman standing wins. When one of these champions, and I'll get back to that in a moment, when one of them dies, that champion's group of deities and powers are eliminated from contention into seeing who are the strongest. So the point, of course, is, in the end, this great contest, as it's known, is a last man standing event where whoever is the final champion standing has basically won it for his or her powers. The champions in question are known as swords, as in the weapon, because whereas a hammer or an axe or even a bow can be used for something other than war. It can be used for, in the case of a bow, it can be used for hunting. In the case of an axe or a hammer, it's also a tool that you can use for, chopping down trees, or, building or making a horseshoe or whatever. But a sword is an item which is created for one reason only, and that's for war. It can't really be used for anything else. It would be a pretty useless kitchen knife. And in the case of these swords, they are de facto immortal. They cannot be killed by ordinary people. They cannot be slain by mortals, so to say. They don't age. They don't get sick. They will go on living until one of their own number kills them. It doesn't have to be in the whole Highlander cut off somebody's head thing. It doesn't have to be. If one sword pushes another sword into a lake and holds them underwater, then they are doing the actual deed of drowning the other sword. If a sword falls into a river or a lake without being pushed there or held down by another sword, they'll just sink to the bottom probably and walk home. It might take a long time, but it's, they wouldn't die from it. It's the active attempt at killing another sword which does it, and it doesn't have to be a matter of dismemberment or cutting someone's head off, although obviously, yes, that works as well. And in the case of the Southlands, the part of the Southlands that you come from, the powers in question are modeled on the old Scandinavian faith, but they are not in fact. It is not in fact. They don't have names like Thor and Odin. They have titles again, but their sword is this woman. And she was, incidentally, the artwork was made by an artist on DeviantArt called Sasha Joe. Do go look her up. She's pretty amazing. And the reason why I mention it is because it's a commissioned piece, so it's original artwork. This is the sword for your part of the Southlands. Her name is Gangariar, and it means, if you translate it, it literally means the Wanderer's sword. The Wanderer is the main deity of the Southlands, or at least the part of the Southlands where you are. For comparison, for reference, he's the equivalent of Odin, but they are only equivalents. It's not, obviously it's not the same character, but she is the sword of the Wanderer, and has ruled over an increasing area in the Southlands since the world was created, about at the time of the game, somewhere between 12 and 1300 years previously. And she is an exceptionally brutal warrior, but she's also a very fair-minded kind of ruler. And she is much respected, and in some few cases even loved by her people. And her seat of power is in Vanarnes, where she has her great hall at the center of the city, in an inner enclosure in the city, which has another defensive wall surrounding her hall, and she is known for preferring, if it is at all possible, she prefers to end wars against other swords by single combat. She strongly prefers that because it means fewer people have to die, and she would much rather have them survive and join her for future campaigns. Unfortunately, of course, it's not always that enemy swords are all that keen on simply giving up and fighting her in single combat. So they would rather take their chances on a major battle, because while a sword cannot be killed except by another sword, if you have 200 people piling on top of them, they're still going to be held to the ground, where it's a whole lot easier to kill them. So you can capture one of them, for example. Yep. And okay. I think, actually, that is a good time to take a short break, and we will be back with more of this session 0 of the Long Voyage.